Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here. On behalf of my family and my grandpa, coming to Berlin Crossroads for this special unveiling of the sign. My papa, Ron Salmons, devoted the last 20 years of his life to researching and preserving the history of Berlin Crossroads. It all began when he discovered a cannonball in his backyard, and that simple find led him to uncover the Civil War battle, which was fought in 1863 in his own backyard. And that vital role that Berlin Crossroads played in the Underground Railroad led him to what is here today. So one of his biggest goals was to see the sign placed here to honor that history, especially the courage of families like the Woodsons, who helped freedom seekers on their journey. So today, this marker, we celebrate the fulfillment of that wish. But he never planned to stop there. Getting this marker was an important step towards his ultimate dream of opening a museum right here in Berlin Crossroads. So the stories and the artifacts that he collected can educate and inspire future generations. So I want to thank everyone who helped make this day possible, all of the residents of Berlin Crossroads and Wellston, Jackson County, the Friends of Freedom Society, and especially our family who supported Papa every step of the way. Your dedication really helped bring his vision to life, and it wouldn't be possible without you. So before we close, I'm honored to introduce two special guests. We have Ann Kramer from the Friends of Freedom Society, who played a key role in helping get this marker built and put here. And Ada Adams Woodson, who is a direct descendant of Thomas Woodson, the son of President Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Woodson, if you don't know, is buried here in Berlin Crossroads. So please welcome them and join us as we remember and honor that powerful history.
Hi, and I say welcome to everybody that's come here. It's a testament to Ron, who worked very hard on this. I don't think I've met anybody more passionate about history, especially their own, than Ron and Carol. So for today, I'm representing the Friends of Freedom Society. The Underground Railroad, as we know, was neither underground nor a railroad, but a system of connected safe havens called stations, like this one, where those escaping the brutal conditions of slavery, and they were known as passengers, it took on the terms of the railroad. They were sheltered, fed, clothed, and concealed on their journey to freedom. Whoops. Blew a fuse or something, right?
I laid it all the way.
Ohio had an extensive network of trails used by the anti-slavery activists, free blacks, churches, and various other groups like that. Chime in if you want to say something. They helped slaves in this area anyways escape from the South onward to Canada in the north to freedom. Ohio perhaps had the most active Underground Railroad operations in the country. Some sources estimate that up to 40,000 slaves escaped to freedom through Ohio, and many of them came through this area. The Friends of Freedom Society was founded in 1995 by Kathy Nelson, who was a wonderful African-American historian like some of you here, but she sadly passed away 3 years ago, but some of us have tried to continue the work, at least with the historic marker program for the Friends of Freedom Society, and that's why I'm here today. The Friends of Freedom Society, we sponsored the marker, and their marker program was not a thing where we paid for markers because we never really had enough money. But if somebody like Ron and Carol came to us about a marker, we would help them, submit the research and for the application. And the most important thing about it is it dedicates the site as an Underground Railroad site official with a marker. So we're very, 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 very happy and proud and honored to be here. And according to my count, the Berlin Crossroads marker is the 50th marker that the Friends of Freedom Society has done. In Ohio.
In Ohio.
Yep. And it's the first Friends of Freedom Society Underground Railroad marker in Jackson County, so that's kind of a little trivia. The other thing we need to mention today is tomorrow marks the anniversary of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. So we're celebrating its 162nd anniversary. And the folks in Gallipolis, you should know that the group over there has been celebrating that anniversary every single year, and they claim, and it's true, they claim to have celebrated it every single year since 1863. And they just had their event. They're probably just wrapping up now. You guys were there, right? Yeah. So anyway, I had to mention Emancipation Day because and it's so fitting that we're doing this now, celebrating freedom on a day like this. And I just wanted to mention one of my colleagues who helped me a lot with this marker. Her name is Beverly Gray, and she's an historian. She lives over in Chillicothe, and she's also with Friends of Freedom Society. But she sits on the board, I believe, still of the Monticello Association, and she did a lot of she helped with the research that kind of tied the Woodsons and the Hemmings to Thomas Jefferson over there. So she's quite a well-known historian too. So anyway, thanks for letting me make some remarks about the marker. And thank you again for all coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want your chair brought up there?
No, I don't need it, thank you. How you doing? Good afternoon, everybody. I am so honored that Carol asked me to say a few words today. And I don't have anything written, so I'll be speaking from my adult mind, my memories as they come and go. And as I remember Ron, he is leaving a legacy here that will go on forever. Because Ron was the kind of guy that when he put his mind to do something, he dug into it. He did research on it. He didn't just get a cannonball and say, oh, got cannonball. You know, yeah. He looked for more cannonballs. He looked for more signs of what was the cannonball represented. Going on to realizing that Morgan Raiders came through this area. And I'm so thankful that the grandson is following the tradition of his grandpa, because it's going to be the young people who are going to continue this history. We seniors are going to present it to them, but it's going to be the young people who's going to carry it on. And Ron is going to be so proud that he has family members who is going to continue his tradition. When I first met Ron and came to Carol, his house, I wasn't a stranger to him. You know, I was a part of the family. I just felt like at home. He took me into his home and showed me the history he was doing and talked about the land and how it relates to the history of the area. And it made me feel good that here's a white man interested in black history. You know, when I was growing up as a kid, black history wasn't taught. I learned more as an adult studying genealogy, working with people like Ron, who had a passion for digging out the truth and presented it in a way that is palatable for everybody, but true and factual. That's why you're here today, because Ron touched something in you. And that's something that I'm going to carry with me, and it's not ever going to leave. I'm going to see Ron's face all the time. When I think of Ron, I'm going to see his face in his uniform. But mostly I'm going to remember his kind heart. and this love for history. Yes, I am a Woodson, and my fourth great grandfather is buried up here at Woodson Cemetery. He had 2 sons and himself and others who were conductors on the Underground Railroad. 2 of his sons were badly injured when they were caught by slave catchers for the work they were doing. Eventually, their injuries caused their early death, and they're buried up there at the Woodson Cemetery, and I descend from one of those sons. It's been a lifelong educational experience for me to learn about my history, and as a member of the Friends of Freedom Society for years, and going with Kathy Nelson and Ann Kramer and Beverly Gray and others along the trails, putting up markers. I was even honored to put up a marker in Ironton, Ohio, got my picture taken and everything. So there's a trail of markers from river to the lake. And so if you go to Google it, you can see all the markers that Friends of Freedom have put out. One of the things I like to close with is that we all are history books standing here today. I am guilty. I have not done this, but we all need to write down our story. Even if you're talking to one of these machines and tell them a little bit about yourself, that's going to help future generations, because we can take our stories to the grave, but no one can turn the pages once we get there. So it's up to us to write our book and tell our story in our own words so that we can leave a legacy for the next generation. With that, may I take everybody's picture? I'm going to have to take it in segments. Thank you for being here. This is for the museum when I get it put together. I hope I don't cut anybody's head off. I'm 86, and so I'm happy to be standing here, and I'm happy to be here with you today, Carol, and your family. Love you all. Take care. Continue the legacy of Ron Sammons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rita.
Hey, I just want to add to her story there a little bit, like she was saying there, we grew up here, my dad was born in 1907, and I never knew anything about history. They never talked about any of this stuff, and Ron started doing all this stuff. That's when we started learning what was going on, and man, it's really something, to see him honored with all this, and I really appreciate it, and glad to see, his legacy's going on.
And your name is?
Paul McCarter.
McCarter?
Mm-hmm.
Like Ada said, he was passionate about history, especially in this area. It's going to be hard to go on without him, but we're trying. And he and I would go around to schools and historical societies and libraries, and we'd present all his artifacts and stories about the Civil War. And he would do that part, and I would do the part of the Underground Railroad quilt, which is what I have here today. And so it's going to be hard to do it without him, but I have my cheat sheet. It always helps. But the first time I ever saw this quilt, Rushi McAllister, and I know a lot of you know or knew Rushi. She was a very special woman. She loved history, and she presented it, and I thought, man, that is really fascinating. Hers was a large quilt, and so Ronnie and I were up in the Amish country one year, and he saw this little sampler, and he said, well, why don't you make one of those? And so I said, well, yeah, I can do that. So he and I went to Belpre and different places in Amish country to get, the fabric was reproduction of the Civil War fabric. So that's the reason it's all in dark fabrics, because it is original reproductions.
I want to give you a hand for doing that.
But all the information that I get about these blocks, and this is not all of the blocks that they used in the Civil War but for the slaves, but it's some of them. And the information that I got was from a book, Hidden in Plain View, by Jacqueline Tobin. And according to the book, she was there at a marketplace in Charleston, South Carolina in 1994. And she ran across this woman, her name was Ozella Williams. And she was an African-American woman who was sitting there with her quilts and different things to sell. Well, Ozella got to talking to Jacqueline, and she said, have you ever heard the story of the Underground Railroad quilt in the blocks? And she said no. So she actually told her what some of the blocks meant. And so all this information that I have here comes from that. And I enjoyed making it, especially since Ronnie asked me to. You couldn't say no to Ronnie, if anybody knew Ronnie. But this first block, it's called Jacob's Ladder. And if you notice in the first block, it's got all these dark colors pointing one way. So in the spring of the year, the women would hang their quilts over the banister. And the blocks would mean a certain thing to them, and they knew because of their hidden language what that meant. So they would put this block so that all this block would be in one direction to show them which way to go. Now, all these blocks are not, they weren't in one quilt. The quilt would be made of just this one block, and so forth. But that's what this first one, it was called a directional quilt, yes. And the second one was called the Monkey Wrench. And the Monkey Wrench, when it was put out, they knew to start getting their tools and everything together for the journey. Because the Monkey Wrench was known for being a, he's a blacksmith, I believe. Yeah, he's a blacksmith, and he was known as a monkey wrench. He had strong, skillful hands, and he could talk to the slaves by doing his hammer on the anvil. And the monkey wrench, he might be loaned out to different plantations around, so he knew all the lay of the land. And Frederick Douglass was a well-known abolitionist, and in his house they found a monkey wrench quilt, and that was in Cedar Hill, Washington, D.C. The next block is the wagon wheel, and when they'd see that block hanging out, they'd tell them it was time to start packing their provisions to go on a wagon. And the wagons had hidden compartments in them that would help the slaves get to freedom. The next one is the carpenter's wheel. And for future runaways, recognize this one as a directive to plan their escape. Just as a carpenter plans his projects, they were to follow the carpenter's wheel to the northwest. To a slave, a master carpenter in their lives was Jesus. As they worked in the fields, they would sing that song, Sing Low, Sweet Cheerio. And would say, to carry me home. Well, they didn't know, the plantation owner didn't know that held a secret meaning. The next one was the bear's claw, and the bear's claw would tell them that ahead there was bear tracks that they could follow that would help them, because the bears knew where to get food and water for them to follow the tracks of the bear, because in the spring those were easily seen. The next one is called the Crossroads quilt. And once fugitives made it through the Appalachian Mountains, they were to go to the Crossroads. Crossroads in Ohio was Cleveland. And they had secret language. So their fugitives referred to Cleveland as Hope. And Detroit, Michigan was another crossroads referred to as Midnight. men would be delivered to safety, were hardware, and women were dry goods. So it was a secret language they had along their journey, so plantation owners and all wouldn't know what they were talking about. This one here is the log cabin, and if you've seen a log cabin with the black square in the middle, that meant that that was a place where they could have refuge, that there was somebody there that would help them. This next one is the shoe fly. The shoe fly represents an actual person who might help escaping slaves. So if you've seen that, you would know that somebody was there was to help you. His responsibility was to secretly aid and harbor fugitives. And sometimes the slaves would hide out in churches or caves. This block is called bow ties, and it's directed the slaves to dress in a formal manner. Because if they were walking through the streets of Cleveland, people wouldn't recognize them. They would just think they were part of the crowd. I think I missed the basket. But the basket was to tell them to pack their provisions also, and a lot of times the people at the plantation would have a basket of clothes, and they would take food to the slaves upstairs or wherever they was hiding. This one here, see, it's called the flying geese. And the slaves learned to take their direction from the timing of the flying geese, because they would always fly north in the spring. So they would stop at waterways along their journey to get rest and food and eat. A clever quilter would take these blocks and they would make it one different than all the rest. So it could be that this one would be all brown, say, and that would show them which way to go. This one is the flying geese, and this quilt was originally designed by Deborah Coates, who's the wife of Quaker Nancy Coates of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They were abolitionists. They ran Safe House No. 5. The drunkard's path, this one, if they've seen that, they would know that they need to walk in a staggered fashion so that they could be picked up by the plantation owners that were looking for them. This one here is the sailboat, and it would tell them that there was a sailboat close by, that they could get freedom there, and there'd be somebody there to help them, to look for that. This here is the North Star, and it would, the North Star was a guiding light leading slaves to Canada and freedom. The Big Dipper always points to the North Star, which is the handle of the Little Dipper. The North Star was also important to navigation, especially to boat owners. And my mouth is dry. But, yeah, this is the story of the Underground Railroad quilt, and, you know, it sounds good, and I suppose it's true, you know, I wasn't there, so. But it sounds like a good story anyway. I'm sure it was, because we all know that they did hang quilts over the slave, or over the banisters. But I invite you all to take a look at all the artifacts and the snacks we have. They're all available. Encourage you to get those. Do you want to go out and unveil the sign at this time, or you want to wait a little bit? I paid for Ada to have to walk down and up and down.
Yeah, but whatever you want to do, I can manage.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can go out and unveil the
Yeah,
sign
let's
now.
do it.
And then come back in, please, everybody come back in and have some snacks and talk or whatever. And if you got any questions on any of the artifacts here, I hope they answer them. If not, to get Kyle.